Hi YouTube. Today we're going to expand the age-old question of steel versus brass. What's the difference? Oh, my gun runs steel all the time. Mine only runs brass. Well, there's a little bit more to it that meets the eye. So, brass versus steel-cased ammo, what's the big deal? Well, I'll go through brass ammo pros first. It expands and contracts easier than steel. It's softer than steel. It creates a better gas seal around the chamber after ignition. They're reloadable. You usually have softer primers, and there's better accuracy because there are more loads available with brass case ammo. So, expands and contracts easier than steel. This is mostly because it's softer than steel. So whenever the gases in here ignite, it creates a pressure bubble in there that forces this down the barrel, but it also has to create a gas seal inside the chamber. This is especially important in semi-automatic rifles and pistols that use the back pressure from that seal to drive some sort of mechanism back to reload the next round. It is softer than steel. I don't know if it has like a better heat tolerance than steel or whatever. I'm not a materials expert, but it is softer than steel. And when you have two metals or two materials just in general, one's harder than the other, if they rub up next to each other, the one that's harder is going to win. So it's better that the brass takes the brunt of the force than the steel inside your chamber. It does create a better gas seal. Okay, I already mentioned that. They are reloadable, so I don't know how many times this has been reloaded. This is one of my hand loads. You can see the little green mark there. But besides the fact that it's primed a certain way that allows you to reload it, since these expand and contract so well, it can expand in the chamber, and then whenever you resize it in a resizing die, it compresses it back down and expands again, and then you go through the process however many times you load the round. But they are reloadable. And, steel you could reload, but we're going to get into why it's not that great or economical later. So they generally have softer primers. Most steel-cased ammo, I don't know if it's cheaper or the guns that they run in or have different firing pins or something, but generally steel ammo that you buy will have hard primers, and when you buy brass ammo, generally it has softer primers. I don't know the exact reason behind that. Maybe it's a cost thing. I don't know, but generally, you have softer primers in brass ammo and you'll get more reliable ignition. And better accuracy because there are more loads available. What's the cons of brass ammo? Price. Pretty much it. Pretty much just price. Anyone would prefer to shoot brass ammo out of their guns. So steel ammo pros. It's cheap. And the only real exception to that is like steel match ammo. Hornady has a steel match load. I think it's in 5.56, 7.62 by 39, and 5.45 by 39. Cons of steel ammo. You can see this is a bigger list here. I'll go through each one. Harder on guns. It's much dirtier powder because it's cheaper to make. They're usually underpowered. They have a lacquer, wax, or polymer coating on the case. The primers are harder, and steel is more brittle. So now, to go through each one. Harder on guns. Well, it's mostly hard on extractors and ejectors. So the extractor claw that has to get around this rim and pull it out, and the ejectors that have to push it out, or on a pistol, the fact that the ejector gets hit by the case as it's ejected out. It has a much dirtier powder. Since it's cheaper to make, I'm sure they don't use as high quality of powder. And since most cheap steel ammo is imported, I don't really know a whole lot about their production process, but I can assume that. Some of them even have corrosive powder. It's mostly old ammo that can be really, really bad for metals, but just something to be aware of. So make sure you don't get ammo that's corrosive. It's usually underpowered. It's cheaper to produce, so they don't have to put as much in here. I'm going to talk about AK reliability later, about why that doesn't really matter. But in an AR, it can cause a failure to eject and seize cases and stuff, and I'm going to get into more detail in that in the last part. They have a lacquer, wax, or polymer coating on the case. You can see this one. I think this is a Monarch case, but you can see it has this like waxy coating on it. And that's to help the steel come out of the chamber after the round's been fired, since it doesn't expand that well. So after a while, this becomes really hot. If you shoot a lot of rounds quickly, this lacquer coating on here is going to become hot. And that can cause it to basically become glue in the chamber and stick in there and have a seized case. Then you have to jam a cleaning rod down the other end to get rid of that case. They have harder primers, so you have a greater chance of light strikes. And some of the really cheap ones like Tula I've seen, that the primers aren't even seated enough and they won't fire at all. So that's just something to expect when you buy cheaper ammo. Steel ammo is more brittle because they don't expand and compress as easily as brass. It can cause split necks. And it also it causes drastic and erratic pressure spikes. And this doesn't necessarily translate to the gas block, so the reliability doesn't have a whole lot to do with this. But once I'm going to get into more detail on this later, but once a lot of steel ammo has been fired in a gun, the pressure spikes and differences are just erratic. It's wild. So, big question. So why do AKs and SKSs and other guns designed to run steel, why do they do it so well all the time and others don't? Well, the short of it, they were designed around this ammo. ARs weren't really designed around this ammo. So they're built over gas, they have a larger gas port, and if you've ever fired an AK, you can tell the recoil is much more violent, and that isn't just because the round weighs more, it also causes the bolt to travel much faster and slam into the back of the receiver, which will provide more reliability because, it's always moving. So that's another reason why those work. ARs weren't designed to shoot steel-cased ammo. I'm getting most of this information from a torture test I saw on Lucky Gunner, so I'm going to have this torture test linked in the description. But they had a Bushmaster AR that ran Federal 5.56, and it shot 10,000 rounds without a malfunction. But my AR can run steel 100%. Well, maybe yours is the exception, but you're missing the biggest issue. What's the worst thing about steel ammo? They have bimetal jackets on their bullets, so it's not all copper. Standard brass ammo typically has a brass or copper jacket that's softer than the rifling in your barrel. So what's so bad about it? Well, the bimetal coating is harder than regular copper. It can slowly erode the rifling in your barrel, which will essentially make your rifle a shotgun and create a smoothbore. Your accuracy will drastically suffer. It can cause keyholing, meaning when this round comes out of here and it's not stabilized, it can just fly into a target sideways, basically. It can cause throat erosion in your chamber, which is really bad. That's when I think it's when the case doesn't fit in there fully all the way. I'm not a gunsmith, so I don't know everything, but it sounds bad. And this can cause gases to pass the bullet before it even exits the barrel. So if it doesn't have a tight seal in the barrel around that bullet, the gas can pass up the bullet, and that's really bad. Then the biggest question of all, besides the bimetal jackets, yeah, that sucks. But from an economic standpoint, you got to compare the price of a barrel versus the price of ammo, because this is the most important question. And the decision is ultimately up to you. So if you shoot 10,000 of these really cheap, and you shoot 10,000 of these at a pricier rate, well, with the ammo you have, with the amount of money you saved, provide you with the price of a new barrel? That's the biggest question you have to ask yourself, because that's the main place you're going to see wear. So when someone says, I don't want to run steel in my gun because it's going to be hard on it, it might be harder on metal parts, in a low rounds count scenario, not really, unless you're shooting like this test, 10,000s of rounds with steel ammo. Where you're going to see the most wear and the most issues is with this jacket. The fact that, I guess it's cheaper to make, but the fact that this jacket is not all copper, and this one is going to wear your rifle a lot slower than this one is. So that's the main issue you're going to see there. You're going to see accuracy suffer. Your semi-automatic rifles will probably have trouble functioning. Unless it was built around steel ammo, it'll probably happen a lot slower. So if you have an SKS or an AK that you run steel in all the time, it's probably going to happen at a much slower rate. You be the judge of what you would rather do. If you'd rather shoot steel or brass and buy a new barrel, whatever, you be the judge of that. But I figured I would just give an informative video to give my opinion and to reference this test, because that was the most comprehensive test I've ever seen with steel ammo being compared to brass. So if you have any other questions, just post them in the comments. Thanks for watching.